Journal entry 64. Changes. A commoner. That is what I am. A simpleton. Stripped of home, gold, status, title and honor, amongst other things. No future ahead, and leaving nothing behind as I inevitably drift towards the mists. Fredrickson, will you be there, waiting for me? But as much as it hurts me, I have to write down the events that led up to my current situation. That is, the things I do remember. I woke up on the cold stone floor of a cell, the moldy straw not even covering the corners of my new abode. It had a smell of old sweat, vomit, blood and rot, almost to the point of making me throw up. My clothes and boots were stripped off of my body by my newfound friends in this locale, and they seemed to enjoy themselves acting as a nobleman. If I had my sword, I would have taught them all a lesson they would never forget. I lay there for a while, gathering my thoughts before sitting myself up against the steel bars. The other men in the cell looked at me with cold stares, and I feared they would all attack me, so I called for help. That seemed only to amuse them, because they all started first to grin at me, showing their blackened teeth if they had any at all, and then they all started to laugh. Panic seized me, and cold sweat began to pour down my back as I screamed louder and louder for someone to help me, but that only increased their amusement. The loud noise eventually made my captors appear, wanting to make me stop shouting. I immediately recognized their armor, Seraph. I told them who I was and that they had no right holding me captive, demanding that they released me immediately. They laughed at me, and the men in my cell joined their choir, but since I persisted, they finally went away to validate my claim. They came back a few hours later. I could see on their skulls that the news they brought was not in my favor, and I was right. Apparently, I had been seen running around in Ossen, screaming about dragons and spiders chasing me, and when I tried to seek refuge in Minister Iloda's mansion, claiming that her mansion was the only safe place left for mankind, someone called for the Seraph. This news obviously made Nathaniel furious, and with a smug smile on their faces, the Seraph gave me the letter bearing the official sigil of House Borghese, in which he renounced me, stripping me of title and honor, and cutting me off from having anything to do with the house in the future. The news struck me like lightning. He would leave me to rot in a cell under the Seraph headquarters. I could see his scowl in front of me. Finally, he got what he always wanted, a reason to get rid of this stain on his family name, and I served it to him on a silver plate. I cannot even bring myself to hate him for what he did. I would probably have done the same if I were faced with the same situation. So there I was, in a cold damp cell without any hope or future. After the first day, I had almost begun to adapt to my new situation, making my business in a bucket in a corner, and forcing myself to swallow the thing that goes under the name food down here. After a few beatings, I almost accepted being at the bottom of the hierarchy of my cell. Had I been facing them with a weapon outside, the end result had been another, but this time I was too weak, and there were too many for me to deal with all of them. At least they let me keep my new teeth. Probably because they did not have any means to sell them for gold from inside the cell. The third day, the guards opened our cell and woke me up to tell me that I had a visitor. They led me to a small room upstairs guarded by a man in ocean blue and bronze colored uniform. I immediately recognized the man, and I knew who were waiting inside the room. Deborah Borghese. What I did not expect was to find her in the state she was in. The right side of her face was swollen and displayed every possible color from the deepest of purple to sickly yellow. Her right eye was swollen shut, her lips were busted as well, and her left arm was in a sling. In short, she looked horrible. Still, She emitted the aura of grace and dignity that always accompanied her, and she wore her head high. And by the look she gave me when I entered, I knew that I was the worst looking one out of the two of us. I asked her what had happened, but I already knew the answer. She told me she had fallen down some stairs. When I told her that I did not believe her and that I wanted the truth, she told me that it was the truth, in a tone that marked the end of that topic. She told me she had managed to sway the mind of Nathaniel into revoking his decision about me. That I would always be known as belonging to House Borghese, disregarding any public statement made by him, and if I still belonged to the house, he would have some measure of control over me. As much as I hated hearing it, I knew it was true, and I knew that Deborah had paid the price for it with the marks on her face. Nathaniel had several conditions to be met before he would renounce his decision, though. Firstly, I would give up any claims to my house in Ossen. Deborah refused to tell me why, but I suspect they will sell it or give it to Jenna. Secondly, I would be sent away from Divinitys Reach to atone for what I had done until I was deemed fit for the city again. Thirdly, I would not tell anyone where I was sent, nor would I try to escape. These terms were not negotiable, and it did not take much effort to see it for what it really was, a way to get rid of me. I thought about my options for a moment, staying in my cell for another week, then spend my days as a commoner, maybe working as a sellsword for a few coppers, or be sent away, maybe never to return but taken care of. It surprised me how difficult the decision was. Would I trade my freedom for my privileged status as a nobleman? Or would I accept a life as a commoner, but choose my own path? In the end, I chose to accept Nathaniel's terms, but I do not really know why. Deborah simply nodded, then got up from the chair to leave the room without a word, but I think she looked relieved. Or maybe it was only my imagination. The seraph brought me back down to my cell, handed me some simple clothes and told me to get dressed. After a few more hours, the guards returned and ordered me to follow them. I got up to follow them, but before I left my cell I said goodbye to my newfound friends by tipping the bucket of shit over, spilling its vile content all over the floor. It gave me some measure of comfort, and I left the dungeon smiling. Deborah was waiting outside with two men I did not recognize, but they wore the Borghese colors, so I assumed decently employed. She explained to me that they would be my escort to my new destination, protecting me from bandits and wild beasts, but I knew their true mission was making sure I did not try to escape. After a brief goodbye, I set out with my escort, walking through Divinitys Reach, maybe for the last time, clad in simple clothes and guarded by two men, made me feel like a prisoner, and I regretted my earlier decision. But it was too late to change my mind now. The sun had yet to reach its highest position in the sky when we left the city behind us. Neither of the men seemed interested in talking, and they refused to share the final destination of our journey. We continued to walk for the remainder of the day, only stopping briefly to eat some lunch they were bringing. Having only eaten the prison food for days, this simple lunch felt like a meal fit for the sick themselves. And when the sun set, my two guards lit torches, and we continued to walk. I had since long given up on trying to talk to them, and the ache in my feet and body did nothing to add to any attempt at making conversation. So we walked on in silence as the light faded from the countryside among us. It must have been close to midnight when we reached our destination. The lights could be seen from miles away, and when we got closer I began to make out details. It was a large building built from stone but smoothened with plaster. Guards were walking the battlements, and immediately I feared they had brought me to a prison, but a smiling monk welcomed us as we approached the gate. The guards seemed to know this monk, and as they handed over a letter they greeted the monk heartily. The monk asked us to step inside, and in the light of his torch, the monk read the letter. A couple of times he looked up from reading it, and with piercing eyes he watched me, not in a judging way, but instead with curiosity. He showed me to a well and told me to fill a bucket with water and follow him. Then he led me to a small room and told me to wash myself clean before joining them for supper. The water was almost freezing and I was shivering with cold when I joined them. There were plenty of food for supper and ale to go along with it. The monks told me their ale was famous all over Krita and that I would get to help them make it if I proved myself worthy. I did not care that much. Instead I focused more on eating and drinking. After the supper, the monk told me I had arrived at Eldvin Monastery and that a generous contribution had been made in exchange for my stay there. The details of my stay would be revealed to me in the morning, and with those words the monk showed me to a room with beds where I would sleep. On the floor, next to my bed, were a few bags holding some of my belongings. I looked through them, and to my relief I found my journal. Deborah had probably read parts of it, but if she had, she did not show any sign of it. I asked the monk for a candle and a pen, claiming that I would have trouble sleeping if I went to bed. He nodded and returned shortly thereafter with a pen and 2 large candles. Then he bid me good night before leaving me to my writing, with the words that breakfast would be served at daybreak. So here I am, at Eldvin Monastery, by my own choice and by my own doing. I am too tired to be mad at anyone, but I know I cannot sleep yet. I yearn for some more tea. I know it would make me sleep within minutes. I will try to go outside the walls tomorrow to try and find some, just so I can sleep a little easier.